The morning the trouble began. Fog still clung to the pines like a secret. Our cabin sat on a quiet ridge above Pine Rock Lake, where loons cried at dawn and nothing but the wind dictated our pace. My wife Emma stood barefoot on the wrapper porch, sipping coffee from a chipped enamel mug. She had that calm, unreadable expression she always wore when she was thinking for moves ahead. I was splitting wood by the shed, halfway through my second stack, when the crunch of gravel snapped the silence. A black SUV, polished to a blinding shine, rolled up our dirt driveway like it didn't belong, which, in truth, it didn't. From behind the tinted glass emerged a woman who did not look built for the woods. She wore heels that sank into the soil, and her beige linen pantsuit looked better suited to a courtroom than a cabin road. She introduced herself without offering a handshake. Carol Bennett, president of the Pine Rock Homeowners Association. Emma didn't flinch. We're not in your HOA. Carol gave a clipped nasal laugh as if Emma had told a cute joke. All properties bordering Pine Rock fall under our extended environmental covenant. I'm here about the smoke, she gestured dramatically toward our chimney, where the faintest plume of white curled into the morning sky. Emma took a slow sip from her mug. Firewood, maple from our land. Carol's lips tightened. The community has standards. Some of the residents are concerned. Wood smoke carries particulate matter bad for children with asthma. I'm here to issue a friendly warning. I leaned my axe against the chopping block and walked over, friendly or formal. She pulled a clipboard from her oversized bag like a gunslinger drawing steel. Per our bylaws, Emma held up a hand. We're on a private deeded parcel, built in 1969. Our title predates the HOA by a decade, and we're not annexed. Carol blinked just once, the way a computer does when it freezes. Then the smile returned, brittle as old wallpaper. Whether you're official or not, you still impact the aesthetic of Pine Rock. We strive for harmony. Then I suggest, Emma said, you learn to coexist with trees. Carol turned sharply and returned to her SUV, her heels sinking with every step. She didn't say goodbye. I watched until the car vanished into the forest bend. Well, I muttered, that felt like a warning shot. Emma didn't answer. She was already making a list in her head. I could see it in the way her fingers tapped her mug. Over the next 10 days, the visits escalated. A letter showed up, printed on official HOA stationery, folded and tucked neatly under a rock on our doorstep. It cited unapproved modifications to the dwelling's exterior and warned of fines if the matter is not addressed within 5 business days. The supposed modification was a new front door lock handcrafted by my cousin and hung last week with Emma's help. It matched the cabin's rustic look perfectly, but apparently it didn't meet neighborhood color conformity standards, whatever that meant. The second notice came by email, after Carol apparently tracked down Emma's professional address. This time, she claimed our outdoor laundry line lowered property values and was visible from the main trailer trail that ran through our own woods. She's baiting us, Emma said one evening, tossing firewood into the iron stove, trying to create a paper trail, make us look like repeat offenders, and the endgame pressure, she said. If the board votes to expand the HOA boundary and claim oversight, we could be forced into membership, but that's illegal. Only if someone fights it. I felt a cold weight settle in my gut. Then, on the 12th morning, Emma found a drone hovering outside the bedroom window. She grabbed her phone, caught video footage, and traced its path as it buzzed back toward the main road. That afternoon, a third notice arrived, this one accusing us of excessive property clutter. Attached were 4 photos, one of our generator, one of the woodpile, one of the cabin's west-facing solar panels, and one of Emma through the window, brushing her hair. The photos were taken from our side of the fence line. Emma's eyes hardened. She crossed the line. That night, we sat by the fire, laptops open, papers spread across the floor. Emma dug into old deeds, zoning maps, and land surveys. I documented everything: the drone, the notices, the SUV plate. We weren't going to fold. Not to Carol, not to the HOA. This wasn't just about wood smoke anymore. It was war, and my wife was already planning her first strike. 2 days after the drone incident, a rusted flatbed truck rumbled down our drive and stopped just shy of the oak tree with the family initials carved into its bark. 3 men climbed out, strangers, sunburnt and silent, and without a word, began boarding up our tool shed. Emma stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, her voice calm but cutting. You're trespassing. One of the men looked up. We've got a work order from the Pine Rock Homeowners Association. That shed has stood for 40 years, I said, striding over. You don't touch it. He held up a wrinkled paper. Says it's non-compliant to close to the fence line. Emma stepped down, waving her phone. Then the HOA's in for a surprise. We've got the land survey and boundary documentation to prove otherwise. Keep boarding it up, and you'll be facing criminal charges. The men hesitated. One of them muttered, Lady, we're just following orders. Then you're following them into court, Emma said. They left 15 minutes later. Boards half-nailed, the flatbed rattling off into the trees. That night, the air inside the cabin was tight with quiet fury. Emma lit a fire and unfurled the folder she'd been building, thin at first, now swelling with maps, printouts, and legal references. She paced as she spoke. She's pushing this to test our response time. That move with the shed? It's not about a structure, it's about leverage. She wants us to react emotionally so she can justify escalation. I leaned against the window frame, watching the moon spill silver over the pine needles. She's escalating all right. That wasn't a warning, that was a siege. Emma nodded. Then we hold the line. The next day, Carol returned. This time with backup a pair of HOA board members and an oversized binder clutched in her hands. She didn't ask permission to come up the porch steps. She didn't wait for us to open the door. She knocked twice, then opened it herself and stepped inside as if invited. Emma rose from the table like a slow-burning flame. "You're trespassing." "We received multiple complaints," Carol said briskly, eyes scanning the room. "You've installed solar panels without an architectural review. And there's concern about noise. Your generator runs past quiet hours." "We don't follow your quiet hours," Emma said, her voice controlled, but steel-threaded, "because we're not part of your association. You know that." Carol plopped her binder on our table and began flipping pages, as if we didn't exist. The two board members shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to follow her or flee. "This property may be outside the initial boundary," Carol said, "but the revised HOA overlay includes all adjacent parcels with visual impact, and your property is visually impactful." I almost laughed. "You mean we can be seen?" She ignored me. "Which means you're bound by community environmental and architectural standards." Emma picked up her own folder. "Actually, it means nothing of the sort. This land is legally distinct, and your so-called overlay hasn't been ratified by the county, which makes this little visit not only intrusive but actionable." Carol paused, just for a moment. Her eyes flicked toward the two board members. One was clearly regretting showing up, the other looked like he wanted to crawl under the porch. Emma continued, stepping closer now. "And if you or your board attempt to take further action, physical, procedural, or otherwise, we'll pursue both civil and criminal consequences, starting with this unauthorized entry." "You wouldn't dare," Carol hissed. "You've misjudged the kind of lawyer I am." Carol stood frozen for half a second, then snapped her binder shut with a harsh clap and turned on her heel. The board members followed like guilty schoolchildren. This time, the silence they left behind was louder than any threat. That evening, a cold wind rustled through the trees. Emma sat on the porch, thumbing through county records, sipping black tea like it was ammunition. I grilled dinner, but neither of us had much appetite. The air felt like something was coming, something bigger than notes on letterhead or men with hammers. "She won't stop," Emma said softly. "No," I agreed. "Not until she hits a wall she can't bulldoze." She looked up, eyes gleaming in the firelight. "Then let's build that wall out of something she won't see coming." I didn't need to ask what she meant. The folder beside her, thick with dates and documentation, was no longer just evidence, it was a weapon. The final straw came on a damp Monday morning when the sheriff showed up. Sheriff Langley was a man carved from the land itself, broad-shouldered, soft-spoken, and slow to take sides. He stepped out of his cruiser with a folded paper in hand, and a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else. "Morning, folks," he greeted, nodding to me. "Then Emma got a complaint here. It says you're occupying a structure deemed unsafe for habitation." Emma blinked. "Unsafe? We had a structural engineer inspect it 2 months ago. The place is sound as a rock." Langley sighed and handed her the paper. "I don't make the calls, I just check on the claims." Emma scanned the form, her jaw tightened. "Let me guess," I said. "Filed by Carol Bennett." He nodded slowly. "She's persistent." Persistent was putting it mildly. Carol had found a sympathetic ear on the county zoning board, a friend, we suspected, whom she'd convinced to flag our cabin as a liability based on a 10-year-old roofing photo from before we restored it. Emma handed back the notice. "This is a desperate play, but fine. We'll show you the inspection reports." Langley walked through the cabin, nodding occasionally. He tested a few beams, checked for code violations, and found none. Before he left, he turned to Emma, voice low. "Between us, this feels personal. If I were you, I'd gather whatever you've got and take it to the county judge." "We already have," she said. He looked impressed. "And I reckon this won't go the way she hopes." That night, Emma laid everything out like a general preparing for battle. She was in full strategist mode, now every file tabbed, every timestamp verified. The case wasn't just about harassment anymore. It had grown teeth: criminal trespass, unauthorized surveillance, illegal entry, filing false reports. Emma had tied every thread back to Karen, documented, cross-referenced, and signed by witnesses, and then, with quiet satisfaction, she made one final phone call to the judge's clerk. By Wednesday morning we had it in hand, a court-issued warrant, but not for us. For her, it was signed, sealed, and stapled to a certified cease and desist letter naming Carol Bennett and the Pine Rock HOA in a long list of violations. Emma read the language aloud with almost reverent calm. "And any further interference by the named parties shall constitute a breach of private property, subject to immediate legal action." It was ironclad. And right on cue, the devil came knocking. Late afternoon, the familiar SUV came crunching up the drive. Only, this time Karen didn't come alone. 2 HOA board members trailed behind her: Elliot Holmes, the nervous accountant type, and Brenda Kelman, who always seemed like she'd rather be at a spa than at a board meeting. Karen didn't knock. She barged through the front door, face flushed, voice rising like a siren. "You've gone too far, Emma. Filing false claims. Calling the sheriff. You're trying to destroy the HOA, my HOA." Emma remained seated at the dining table, arms folded, calm as a lake before a storm. "You've just committed another violation," she said flatly. Karen scoffed. "This isn't a courtroom. You don't scare me with your little folders." Emma didn't flinch. She reached into the leather file case beside her and produced the warrant, neatly folded, stamped and official. Karen hesitated. Her eyes darted to the paper, then to the board members behind her. Neither looked eager to speak. Emma stood slowly, crossed the room, and held the document in Karen's direction. "You've illegally surveilled us, tampered with property, filed fraudulent complaints, entered without consent, and violated county law by attempting to annex land not under your jurisdiction. This isn't a scare tactic. It's a legal reckoning." Karen's hand trembled as she took the paper. Her lips moved, but no words came out. "I suggest," Emma added, voice steely, "you read it carefully before your next move, because your name, Carol, is on the top line." Karen stepped back. Her eyes flicked toward Elliot, who was already moving toward the door. Brenda followed. And for the first time since this began, Karen said nothing. She didn't argue, didn't sneer. She simply turned and walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft, final click. We stood in silence for a moment. Then Emma exhaled. She finally shut up. "I said." Emma turned to me, her eyes fierce but tired. "She's not gone yet, but her armor just cracked." And in that moment I realized something. The war wasn't over, but the tide had finally turned. The silence after Karen's retreat didn't mean peace, it meant pressure. The kind that builds just before the storm breaks. But this time the storm was ours to unleash within a week. Emma had filed a formal lawsuit naming both Carol Bennett and the Pine Rock HOA as defendants. The charges: harassment, unlawful trespass, illegal surveillance, and defamation. We attached copies of every letter, drone, photo, and board action as evidence. It wasn't just a case, it was a timeline of tyranny, a record of calculated overreach, and a legal trap with teeth. The court moved quickly, faster than anyone expected. Carol tried to stall the process, claiming she acted in the best interest of the community. With a judge, an older man with a fondness for land rights and no patience for petty politics, wasn't buying it. "Your authority," he told Carol in the preliminary hearing, "ends where their deed begins. And from what I see, you've been kicking down doors that were never yours to open." Emma sat beside me, poised and professional, her briefcase shut tight like a vault. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She had something better than vengeance. Proof. The court ordered Carol to cease all contact with us immediately. But the damage had been done on not just to us. News of the case spread through Pine Rock like wildfire. Neighbors started talking. Some had their own stories. Fines for leaving holiday lights up too long. Threats over paint shades. Violations for gardening without board approval. People who had quietly endured Karen's reign were suddenly emboldened by our resistance. Several filed supporting statements. A few resigned from the HOA altogether. And a small group led by Elliot Holmes, the once nervous board member, called for a complete reorganization of the HOA's leadership. By the time our lawsuit reached mediation, the HOA had already voted to remove Carol as president. That moment when the motion passed and Carol's nameplate was pulled from the office door felt better than any courtroom victory. But justice wasn't finished with her yet. After reviewing our evidence, the county prosecutor decided to pursue a criminal investigation, not just into Carol's personal actions, but into whether HOA funds had been used illegally to surveil, harass, or retaliate against us. There was talk of forensic audits, subpoenas, even jail time. Carol, once so loud and certain, now appeared in court pale and subdued, speaking only when prompted by her lawyer. We settled the civil case 2 weeks later. The HOA agreed to pay damages and issue a formal apology. Carol was personally liable for a portion of the restitution, and, per the agreement, barred from holding any position in a property association for 5 years. We used the settlement funds to restore the cabin, fully reshingled the roof, rebuilt the back deck, even commissioned a local artist to carve a wooden sign that read, "Freedom Cabin, EST 1969, reclaimed 2025. But what mattered more than repairs or restitution was the restoration of peace. With Carol gone, the harassment stopped. The drone never returned. The mailbox stayed untouched. No more clipboard knocks or threats wrapped in official seals, just birdsong, wind through the needles, and the quiet creak of the porch swing. Emma had hung herself one morning. As we watched the sunrise paint the lake in gold, I asked her, was it worth it? She didn't answer right away, just rocked, slowly, sipping coffee from her old enamel mug. Then she said, "This wasn't just about us. It was about drawing a line and refusing to let someone with fake authority erase it." I nodded. "And you didn't just hold the line, you pushed it back." She smiled then, but not smugly. It was the smile of someone who'd fought for something sacred and won not with fists, but with facts. Power without boundaries, she said, is just bullying with a badge. In the months that followed, the HOA passed new rules, this time aimed at limiting board power, not expanding it. Elliot was elected interim president, and the community slowly shifted toward a place where people respected each other more than the pages in a covenant book. That's for Carol. She sold her house and moved out of Pine Rock quietly. No farewell party, no public defense, just an empty driveway and a for sale sign that wilted under the same sun she once thought she controlled. And here we remained on our own land, under our own roof, with no one left to knock without reason. Final line for YouTube video. When HOA Karen broke into our cabin, she thought we'd fold, but my wife brought the land shut her down for good.